Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Morning Update Show. I'm your co-host, Trey Holiday, and I'm so happy to be with all of you this morning, especially my Converge team and my co-host, Big O. What up, Big O?
Good morning, Trey Holiday. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. People can't hear what we're talking about before. I'm glad it's no hot mic. But I do see the sun is shining. Man, that's the thing, the snow, like in Seattle, the city, man, the snow comes, it gets on the ground, gets icy for a minute, and then it's like it's gone. I don't know, some of the regions further out, it's still like bad conditions, but nice sunny day here in Seattle.
Absolutely. The drive-in was so nice. Honestly, it really was. And I think the sun has just brought, some great energy for the day.
Right. Lots of news for today. Of course, there's a big news amongst lots of big news in our city. There was a police shooting last night. It was crazy because the shooting just occurred just 3 blocks from our studio right here. Wow. And I was actually like walking home, and then like I saw it was a massive police presence, and then like somebody called me and everything else. I walked over there and arrived in time for the PIO who was on the scene. So we'll play some of that. And actually, we were going to start with that, but I think that a better place to start the show is last night. We were there at the Northwest, at Jimi Hendrix Park, right adjacent to the Northwest African American Museum. And the people at NAAM had actually put together a community vigil. It was a lot of people there. It was a lot of community people. You see like a big representation of people from different churches, things like that, and also different community organizations. Anais' some of her family and friends were there, and actually her aunt addressed everybody. And I'll just put some of the video here over some photos from last night shot by Jake Gravbrock.
I didn't know what to expect when I came here tonight, but I do know that most of you didn't know Anais, and I think that you should know that she was unique and beautiful, and her heart was open. It was all the way open. She had so much love for everybody.
Oh my goodness, to hear those words, thank you for putting that together, Big O, because, I was out there and then had to rush and get home to the kids. And honestly, it was an amazing event to just have so many preachers and different speakers out there representing community, lots of great prayers and uplifting and positive energy, sending love to the family. Again, our hearts go out to all of you to hear that auntie's words, and you can just hear the emotion in it,
Yeah, no, it was pretty emotional there, and also one of Anais' cousins spoke as well. So a part of this healing process that we talk about.
Absolutely.
So that was good. And like I said, up there at NAAM at Jimi Hendrix Park yesterday. So other news here, moving along. We got a lot of video today, by the way. I was in here recording late last night, and then that's what I said. I walked out and came into this scene. This is the Seattle Police Department's public information officer describing some of the events that occurred last night in this police shooting on the waterfront.
Around 9:20 p.m. this evening, Port of Seattle Police contacted the Seattle Police about a man in crisis armed with a kitchen knife at Alaskan Way and Seneca Street. When officers arrived, the man, who had reportedly cut himself, fled down Alaskan Way. Police approached the man and attempted to use a less lethal tool, but the device was ineffective. The man moved toward officers, who fired, fatally striking the man. Representatives of the Office of Police Accountability and the Office of the Inspector General and the SPD Force Investigation Team have responded to the scene and are investigating. The involved officers will be placed on paid administrative leave in accordance with SPD policy while the investigation is ongoing. And per policy, the department will be releasing video of the incident within 72 hours.
So body cam should be out in less than 72 hours now. This is a story that we always hear, though. Someone who's suffering a mental illness break or a mental illness episode, And, there was I got people, I witnessed around the shooting, and it's a lot of different stuff, information that comes in. And I asked, people were like, hey, you're stirring the pot. Because I asked them, I was like, well, somebody in the building, one of the buildings, they contacted us. And they're like, hey, well, I saw a dude with hands up. And I asked the PIO that. I don't, whether she could confirm or not. I don't think that's stirring the pot. I mean, in the shooting last week, we also asked them, hey, we heard that this was random shooting, So I think that you're supposed to ask these kind of questions. And, the ones that they can answer, they answer. And apparently the ones they can't, they can't. But the footage will be out in 72 hours. But again, though, this issue here of mental illness and response to mental illness, and yeah, this guy.
It's just one of those things. Oh, for me, when you hear another story like this, it just goes again to how the police conduct themselves with regard to dealing with somebody who is mentally ill, somebody who was out there, obviously cut himself with a kitchen knife. It's just unfortunate that whatever tactic they tried to use didn't work. So I wonder if it was a taser that wasn't working or something like that.
They asked what less than lethal was deployed. One of the other reporters there asked Valerie Carson, is her name, what other less than lethals were used, and she couldn't confirm at that time. Yeah, but she said that it was ineffective, I believe was the term that she used.
Yeah, so this is why it's so important to follow these cases as more and more evidence comes out. I know we'll be following this one as the body cam footage comes out. Hopefully we're able to see whether his hands were up. We're able to see if he was attempting to stab the officers and they had to react like this. I think we can't really say more until we see more, but this is one of those things where it just showcases the wide-ranging amounts of calls that police get. And if there was somebody on the scene that could have actually had mental health training, a way of talking down this person who was obviously not well in the head. Oh, that's it.
Right. The initial call came in from the Port of Seattle Police. The Port of Seattle Police called SPD and said that there was a man there in crisis with a knife. And I think that the city of Seattle, and probably not just the city of Seattle, some other cities as well, just the response of when it's a mental illness involved in it, it's crazy because we're getting ready to play this clip here in a bit about Charleena Lyles, that the judge, the appeals court said that it's going to trial. And even here in the comments, people are talking about, man, after Charleena Lyles, why are people still calling the police on a case like this? But 72 hours is what they're saying, and that the body camera, the body worn camera should be out. And hopefully that will tell us all that. And there's government property down there as well as private buildings and apartments and everything else. So I'm sure there's lots of footage that's around there. And so
we'll see it as it comes out, man, because a lot of the time these videos tell the story, man, in a way that is unedited, in a way that just gives us a full picture. You know what I'm saying? Most of the time. And that's where we start to learn so much more. When we understand maybe there's a history of this person having mental health breaks. Those are the ways that we really learn more about the details of stories like this as time goes on.
Yeah, it's wild, and I think that this again, we always talk about these crises creating an opportunity. Unfortunately, when someone dies, you don't want that to be the crisis where an opportunity comes out of. But, this is a conversation and really action behind it that needs to occur in this city, because we see, of course, the circumstances are different, but in the broader sense, someone has a mental illness call and they end up dead. And so we want to see how we can expand upon this, because this is an opportunity for our city here to have a discussion. And it's a lot of people who are talking about different methods, maybe that work in other cities. Who knows? Some of these things might work here, they might not. But if we don't go down that road of trying to figure it out, then we're probably always going to get the same result. Okay, so moving on here, since it was later on in the show, but we just talked about Charleena Lyles, and so we're bringing this up here. So the appeals court, they reversed a lower court's ruling. So what happened is a lower court in this throughout all of Charleena Lyles, basically the case's expert witnesses, and the case was basically on pause. And the state there for Charleena Lyles, they went to the Court of Appeals. It took a while. This has been in court since 2017, by the way. And so they filed, and man, the court ruled, and the court is saying that the expert witnesses are in, and this case against the 2 Seattle police officers is going to go to trial. I talked to Kevin Schofield briefly. I'll play a few minutes here. The full interview will be up probably later on today across our social media platform.
Yeah, so the appeals court was asked to review a trial court ruling from like 2 years ago, where the trial court had basically ruled in favor of the 2 police officers that shot and killed Charleena Lyles, to say that they couldn't be held responsible for it. And the appeals court came back and said, in a nutshell, no, you can't do a summary judgment ruling now, because there's still a lot of facts that are important and material to this case that are in dispute, right? That weigh on the different ways that you could actually dismiss this and say that they're not liable for this. So you can't do that. You've got to send it to trial and let a jury look at these facts and make some decisions. You may still decide at the end that, yeah, right, based upon the facts, they can't be held liable for this. But at this point, you can't do that.
Right. And so what does this mean? This means that this case is now going to trial?
Yeah, it's going to go to trial. Unless it gets settled between now and then, it's going to go to trial.
Wow. And what are some of the facts that are in dispute? I know we've talked about before, summary judgment, when all the people agree on the facts, but here there's disagreement on the facts.
Well, a big part of it was that the trial court basically threw out the testimony from 3 expert witnesses that the plaintiffs called. One was what they call a forensic psychologist, and he does what's called psychological autopsies, where he doesn't actually get to talk to the dead person, obviously, but he can look at all the facts and all the context around it and draw conclusions around what the state of mind was for the person, for the victim. And in this case, he said that he believes that Charleena Lyles was in a psychotic state when she lunged with a knife at the police officer and they shot her, and that means that she was unable to actually form the intent to harm or kill the police officers. And that's important for some of these things. The other 2 witnesses, expert witnesses that the trial court threw out, were experts on police conduct. And they concluded that the police officers acted unreasonably. And the city and the police officers challenged the standard that they used to do that. And the trial court judge agreed with the police officer and said, no, they're using the wrong standard, and kicked it out. And the appeals court came back and said, no, you have to allow all 3 of those witnesses.
Thank you so much, Kevin, for breaking that down for us and our audience here, because ultimately it is these kinds of facts that need to be brought out to the larger public so that people understand. Again, we talk about nuance and it being so important in these kind of cases. And ultimately, once again, here we are. Her family was saying it. So many other people were saying it, that, she was 100 pounds. There was 2 big officers. We've seen that, when we were in comparison, we've seen them respond differently, even when they have a big over 6 foot dude, 300 pounds, and they respond differently, even when they're being attacked. So again, I love the fact that they're going to listen to these 3 witnesses and allow them and their testimonies to be a part of this case. They're vital. All the things that they're saying are crucial to what happened to Charleena that day.
Right. And in the full interview, which, like I said, be up probably a little bit after we get off air right here, I asked Kevin Schofield, what's the timeline on this? And he said it could be in trial in a matter of months. Because in the interim, while they've been waiting for the appeals court to make a ruling, the trial judge had basically told everybody, hey, get all your stuff together in case this ruling actually came out. So the Charleena Lyles, this case is going to move forward. It's going to go to trial.
You know what? I knew there was going to be some good news today. Thank you for that, because honestly, I think so many people out there have been wanting to see justice. And, you know, it is a case by case basis, but ultimately, so many in community are like the overwhelming number of these cases that don't really get to see justice, that are not really there about really making sure that the victim is cared for, that we actually see it for what it is. That is where, you know, I think a lot of people find, you know, some discomfort. So this right here is providing a lot of comfort, because we need more and more of our cases involving police shootings to result in things like this.
All right. Moving along, we talked about this yesterday. The city of Mercer Island, they had some legislation that they were debating there, in which some people are actually calling a ban on homelessness there in Mercer Island. And basically, and it passed last night. And I talked to Erica C. Barnett from publiccola.com last night about it as well. Again, that full interview will be up right after the show. And she said basically that it's going to be illegal to sleep in a public space, like if you're in your car or something, if you're in a public parking lot or anything like that. And it kind of sounds like the city of Mercer Island is outsourcing the homeless or homelessness to the east side, to maybe a shelter in Kirkland or something like that. But the public comments on this, if you listen to the full interview, and Erica describes some of the public comments, man, it's kind of scathing. And she put it about 70% of people in the comments were for this new ordinance there. And it was a lot of people who talked about their fear around homelessness. And it was crazy. In the full interview, what Erica Barnett said is the actual police chief over in Mercer Island showed more sympathy, empathy, and deference for the situation than the city council members. Because, you know, the police chief was like, man, we don't want to spend our time arresting homeless people who are just trying to be in their spots. Anyway, let me play this clip right here and we'll come back.
It would essentially ban what they call camping, so being unsheltered, sleeping overnight in any public place in Mercer Island. It's already against the law on Mercer Island and has been for 30 years to sleep in the parks. But this bill would basically say, if you're on a sidewalk, you can be arrested. If you're in a car or an RV, you can have your car or RV towed and impounded and be arrested. There's a law on the books that says, or a district court ruling that says that you can't actually just outright ban being homeless, but they get around that by saying that there's available shelter. And so they are partnering with these 4 shelters on the east side and saying that they will offer access to those shelters, which are not on Mercer Island, to anybody they find sleeping outside. And if they, quote unquote, refuse that shelter, then they can be arrested and fined. And it's up to 90 days and up to $1,000 fine.
And what's some of the feedback that's coming out over there in the public comment? And what are some of the thoughts and actions that the city council there in Mercer Island is taking?
Well, so I want to emphasize, I mean, the council wants to support this. They are, I think, 6-1 in favor of it. So it's pretty likely going to pass, if not tonight, at some point soon. I would say I've been watching public comment all night, and I would say it's probably 70 to 80% in favor. And the people in favor are saying that, you know, this is going to prevent crime, that homeless people, you know, are dangerous to women and children. One woman talked about how she used to live in Santa Monica and she felt like she had to peek out her window every time, or her door every time she went outside, because she was scared of the homeless people. And it may feel like I'm exaggerating, but I'm really not. I mean, the comments are pretty extreme on that side. And on the other side, people are saying, you know, let's at least give it 90 days. Let's delay this legislation for 90 days so we can actually listen to people who have experienced homelessness, because they have not been part of this discussion at all. Listen to experts on homelessness and see what some of the evidence-based solutions are. Because the idea that shelter in Kirkland, which is, you know, more than 10 miles away from Mercer Island, is adequate to serve people on Mercer Island is pretty it's pretty unrealistic. And it's also legally, I mean, that's where the you know, they're going to get a lot of legal challenges, because I mean, 10 miles away, that's like from where I'm sitting in South Seattle to Renton. It's not somewhere I could get to super easily without a car and resources.
Yeah. So yesterday, this story, the initial story, had you fired up in here.
You know what? Oh my gosh, to even think about the public comment and to hear what she's saying there, to be honest, it is appalling. It is like, you know, people, and we talk about it here all the time, about the humanity, the sense of empathy, the sense of compassion. And it's clear that if she's saying 70 to 80%, we're talking about fear of homeless, peeking out their doors before they go outside for the fear that homeless people are going to, I don't know what, attack them. I don't know. They think they're going to rob them. I mean, ultimately, there's, again, what I was saying yesterday, there is a wide range of people that find themselves homeless. And most often, when you look at the data, so many of the families that are out there are just working poor. You know, they're not criminals. They don't have criminal records. That's not what it is. And so again, it feels like the people in Mercer Island are basing their decisions and basing their opinions and perspectives on things that are actually myths. And that's why the education around this is so key. I mean, there's some people that are going to just be this way regardless, even if they are educated and realize that nobody is coming into your house because you leave your home and they're homeless. And now they're going to come into your house to destroy your property. That's not really what happens. And if there's maybe a handful of cases where that has been the case, majority of the data will show that that's not what it is. People are trying to survive out here, man.
Right. Well, and you know, so the thing is, as well, as I believe that unless you're a resident on the island, if you live in if you're sleeping in your car and in a public space there, then it could be a crime. And what Erica Barnett said in the full interview, you know, she was like, talked about people who work, you know, on that island, you know, landscapers, this and that, go to their car, nap, things. And, you know, one thing she said was maybe people on Mercer Island are okay with the people working around their homes, but not living there. And a lot of the people, you know, there is this large umbrella around homelessness and the people in different categories. But, you know, there's a good number of people, especially in parking lots, in cars, in the car works. A lot of those people, like we said yesterday, are the working poor. You know, and yeah, this is interesting because especially, you know, it's Mercer Island. It's I don't know. I think that a lot of stuff these days, it really just shows kind of like, you know, who we are and what's going on. The people in Mercer Island are saying, and you're talking about a small number of people, at least right now. There's, I would say, less than 10 that the Mercer Island police are responding and interacting with. So you got people on the island saying like, hey, well, while the number is small, we need to get on this. We need to, you know what I'm saying? We need to figure this out. You got other people who are like, hey, you guys are just outsourcing your homeless. It looks like apparently over there to Kirkland. You got other people who are like, damn, it's crazy. You can't sleep in your car in a public spot. But the city council there, Mercer Island, voted 6-1. So they represent their constituents. So clearly this is the will of the voters, the constituents there in the city of Mercer Island.
It really does say a lot about those who live in Mercer Island. And to be honest, all of you who feel this way, I gotta say this, you ought to be ashamed of yourselves. You know, you really do, because you're passing it's like bigotry against homeless folks. You're passing that down to your kids because they now think, oh yeah, I need to be afraid of homeless people. This is why I was saying yesterday, take some time, volunteer at a shelter, volunteer at a food bank, go somewhere where they're passing out meals so that you can actually begin to interact with homeless families and begin to actually see the wide range of families that are out there. Start talking to people, understand the reasons why they're out there. You will be shocked at some of the stories that you hear. It is not just people, again, that are just desolate, drug addicts, you know, criminals. The ways that you guys are moving is, again, based on something that's mythical. And I will say this, to outsource them to other shelters. You guys have the money to build your own shelter. And that's the way that you care for people, by showcasing, yes, we understand that we have a small population of homeless people here, but we need to be caring for them. Instead, what you guys are saying is we need to discard them off of our island. That's what they're saying. Oh,
yeah. Well, Mercer Island, they fought the light rail as well. What's interesting, and I don't know enough about the Mercer Island light rail fight to go too deep into it, but I will just speak in a general sense, is that we found all across America where public transportation programs are blocked when it comes to affluent neighborhoods, where it's like, nah, we don't want no bus service. Nah, we don't want no train, because they don't want access of really poor people coming out there to the neighborhood. Now, I'm not trying to indict the people of Mercer Island. I don't know enough about that light rail battle. I'll look into it, and maybe we can have a more of informed discussion. But, the new, you know what I'm saying?
Nothing new, but definitely sad, and definitely showcases that we have had a lot of stagnation in terms of ideal growth throughout this country. When you talk about affluent neighborhoods, most often than not, we're talking about rich white people. Let's just call it what it is. That's what we're really talking about here. And ultimately, that is not more of a generalization. We know there's plenty of rich Black folks and Asian folks and Latino folks, but ultimately, we are talking about the majority of these people not wanting to mingle with others from different classes. That's why I called it out yesterday and said this is a class issue. It goes beyond race. This is about different classes, and ultimately the best neighborhoods, the best communities are those that are diverse, whether you want to believe it or not. Now, there's so much data that has been out there that showcases this, that ultimately it is best when you combine and have diversity in your neighborhoods and in your communities. When you're just wanting to be around people that are just like you, unfortunately, you don't have much diversity there. And that's what they're saying here.
Yeah, well, they've passed it. So this is now ordinance there in the city of Mercer Island. Moving on here, QFC. Kroger, who actually owns QFC, they came out and they clapped back the city of Seattle and this hazard pay. And they said they're closing 2 stores here, one of them up on Capitol Hill on 15th Avenue. And one of the main things they cited, was the hazard pay, the $4 an hour hazard pay, in which Kroger and QFC fits into that category of stores where they have to pay the frontline grocery store workers an additional $4 an hour. And so one of the stores is closing, will be closing, is up on Capitol Hill. So I reached out to Justin Carter of CapitolHillSeattle.com, the Capitol Hill Seattle blog, to ask his thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big news for a neighborhood, right? When your grocery store closes down, and for 15th Avenue East and the top of Capitol Hill, this is a big story. It's interesting to see Ohio-based Kroger making a thing of Seattle politics, decided to couch these closings, this store on Capitol Hill in Wedgwood, in the blanket of criticism of the Seattle process around hazard pay on COVID-19. A couple weeks ago, the city council approved $4 an hour hazard pay requirement for grocery workers. It's a little different. It's trailblazing as far as the nation's going, and probably something a lot of workers deserve. And a lot of people in Seattle support it. But Kroger said, hey, now it doesn't pencil out, and we need to close these 2 stores, and they're making an example of the city of Seattle right now and closing some of their groceries here. And it's a big deal on Capitol Hill.
Right. And one of the things they said is that their profit margins are razor thin, and that, with the hazard pay, it just no longer was profitable for them to continue to have the store open. I mean, even before COVID, though, this is something that big supermarket chains do, is they look at, okay, who's making the most money, who isn't, who should we close, things like that. But I mean, that's their story, is that they're not really making any money. And now with hazard pay, they're going to go in the red.
Yeah, I mean, the grocery industry is amazing. It's one of those. It's almost like movies. They always, nobody makes any money, but it's like the massive amounts of investment in the grocery industry. It's one of the biggest demands for commercial space on Capitol Hill and the Central District, where we're going to see Amazon opening up a grocery at 23rd and Jackson. So there's something going on. There's a business there. Maybe for you and me, we're like, oh, we can't figure it out, but someone has, they're making money. And it's a funny thing to hear. The grocery industry is always like, oh, our margins are super thin. It's a funny take on business.
I agree with you 100%, Justin. Let me just say, from a person that started my working career, my first job at Safeway, and then I eventually found my way into the Kroger family. And I will say, in terms of the work that I do with UFCW Local 21, shout out to all of you union workers. Ultimately, grocery is a joke when they talk about not making money. I got to be honest here. This is why the workers are always out there making sure that their unions and their contracts, everything that they do, they have to negotiate strong, because unfortunately the grocery industry is not always willing to budge at all when it comes to ensuring the care of their workers. This is something that it goes beyond time, to be honest, because we have seen this time and time again. I found myself involved in Kroger debates and having to do things across the different lines. So honestly, come on, Kroger. One thing I will say is that there was 2 QFCs on Capitol Hill. So maybe you're just saying, hey, at least there's another one, and maybe they can go to that one. But ultimately, this is another game that we see big industries playing.
There's three on Capitol Hill, two on Broadway.
3.
And one on 15th. But, what they're saying is that they're like, yeah, we can't afford it. Grocery outlet as well. I believe 2 grocery outlets are filing suit. They're saying hey, we can't afford the hazard pay. But so it'll be interesting actually to see how all of this plays out. And one thing Justin talked about, though, is on the flip side is people are rushing to open grocery stores in the Central District and on Capitol Hill. Moving on here, this is from the Seattle Times. This is Maya Leshiker. Washington BLM Alliance files ethics complaints against lawmakers. Here in the Seattle Times. Washington Black Lives Matter Alliance has filed ethics complaints against 3 Republican lawmakers, claiming their questioning in public hearings was discriminatory and offensive towards people of color. The alliance has filed its complaints against Representative Brad Kilpert, Republican from Kennewick, Representative Jenny Graham, Republican from Spokane, and Representative Jim Walsh, a Republican from Aberdeen, and it filed with the state legislative ethics boards this week. Quoting here, "This is a real-time demonstration of why we're here in Olympia," says Sakara Remu, the lead strategist for Black Lives Matter, Seattle King County. "These representatives who attempted to marginalize and discredit Black people by forcing them to litigate their testimony are revealing the inherent bias that allows oppression to flourish." Remu goes on to say that since the first hearing of the session, it was very clear this was going to become a problem, and it's only escalated since then. And so, Black Lives Matter. This is the alliance. I believe there's Black Lives Matter Seattle King County, and then there's an alliance there for the state of Washington, and we're doing down in Olympia. But it looks like, man, they're bringing the pain down there to filing an ethics complaint against lawmakers.
Well, when you read the full article, you actually see some of the language that those lawmakers were using to talk to, folks that were down there to testify, people of color, a Black woman. And one of the things that they're saying is they're pinpointing certain things around, hey, but do you have actual facts that prove this? Are there facts that prove that? And people are talking about it in terms of lived experience, as if that isn't factual enough. The way that they were going at these people was not right, man. And ultimately, I think that these guys are doing the right thing by filing this complaint. The one thing that is sad about ethical complaints is that oftentimes they don't actually mean anything anything in the end of the day. You know, they're going to have to go through all of this legislation. They're going to have to look at all the facts. They have an ethical board that's going to do that. But we've seen that a lot of times ethical complaints don't actually mean anything. The one thing that is great is that it does call to action a bit about for folks to kind of perk their ears up around how people are actually pressing those folks of color, Black folks, and folks from the global majority on issues like this, man. Just trying to like poke at their language.
Right. Well, something else for us to follow or to stay on top of. This right here from our partners at the South Seattle Emerald. Rainier Beach eyes multifaceted solutions to ending violence in the Safeway parking lot. And it says here, after late January, in which high volume shooting incidents in or near Rainier Beach Safeway parking lot left almost 100 bullet casings scattered about. Fortunately, no one injured or cured. There appears to be a broader sense of community purpose around preventing further gun violence. This is this parking lot there in this Rainier Beach area. This is something we've been talking about. This is a 7-page article here by Ari Robin McKenna from the South Seattle Emerald. And in there, actually, they're talking about as well is a discussion that Tony B from Rainier Avenue Radio said that he was having with community members out there in South Seattle in the Rainier Beach area. And there's all kinds of layers to it as well. People want to close the liquor store. They want to take the liquor store's license. But the liquor store has 2 stores right next to it to sell liquor. I think it's like a Safeway and a drugstore. So is it really the liquor store? Is it, is the lot? Is community being involved enough? So it's really, really good article here in the South Seattle Emerald.
Well, I'm so glad that they're writing about it because honestly, this is one of those issues, as Tony B was even just saying, that showcases there's a wide range of people that care about this parking lot, that care about this in terms of it being such a staple in their neighborhood. And it is not right to target the business owner of color right there in terms of the liquor store when it's not about liquor sales. As Omari just pointed out, there are multiple places in that lot that are selling liquor. So to sit there and try to target, a business owner of color, once again, to say, well, this business needs to get shut down because of all of this violence has really nothing to do with that business. And I love the fact that there are a wide variety of people that are bringing their brilliance to find solutions to this community violence because ultimately they don't want it in their communities. As Mike Davis pointed out, there's mothers coming out there grilling on Fridays. They're trying to showcase that, hey, this is our neighborhood. We care about this space. And it's great to see that there's so many amazing community folks that are using a grassroots approach to try to figure out some solutions around this issue, though.
Yeah, no, this is good. This is happening. And again, you can find that at the South Seattle Emerald. And a national story here. And I found it from our big brothers at the Black News Channel down there in Tennessee. But it's an update here around the George Floyd case. And Chauvin, who apparently was going to try to take a plea deal on the case. And it looks like William Barr had actually shut it down. And so this is a clip right here from the Black News Channel, and where they're discussing this plea deal that was out there around the George Floyd case.
And so, Dr. Laura, what can you tell us about this plea deal that Derek Chauvin, his attorney, tried to negotiate with former Attorney General William Barr?
Yes, so essentially, Derek Chauvin believed that the case against him was so devastating that he agreed to plead guilty to third-degree murder. And what's interesting about this deal is part of the deal that he had initially made, or rather his attorney, is he was willing to go to federal prison for more than 10 years. Now, local officials at this time were dealing with the protests and the aftermath of the George Floyd killing. And so they were very eager to kind of get this over with, in a sense. And so they actually had a conference already scheduled, Ashley, to announce this plea deal. And so none of us, of course, knew all of this was going on behind the scenes.
Wow. And what exactly did the plea deal, fall through, or why did it exactly fall through?
Well, surprisingly, at the time, Will Barr, as we know, was the acting attorney general, and he actually rejected the plea deal or the arrangement at the last minute. And the reason he had the power to do that is the plea deal was contingent upon Derek Chauvin actually serving his time in a federal prison. And so since he asked to serve in a federal prison, another part of that deal was also asking for a guarantee that he would not face any federal civil rights charges. And essentially, Ashley, Attorney General Barr said he was concerned about the possible backlash, right? With the sentence perhaps being too lenient and not allowing the time for a full investigation. And so what's so powerful about that is it really shows that the protests were working. They were influencing decisions that were being made by law enforcement. They did need a full investigation. And I think people would have been outraged if they felt like Derek Chauvin, or rather George Floyd, didn't get his day in court. And so I think that was a really smart move on the part of Attorney General Barr.
Mm. And do you think the news of this plea deal may potentially impact the criminal case against the officer, which goes to trial next month, actually?
Absolutely. You have to remember that jury selection until March 8th. And so potential jurors are hearing about this plea deal that went south. And what that implies is, well, surely, was he guilty? Did he intend to kill George Floyd, as we all saw in that video? The fact that he was willing to plead guilty to third-degree murder. And so I think it's going to be hurtful to his case for those reasons, because there's an adverse inference of guilt. And so I think it's going to hurt him more than it's going to help him.
Mm. If the trial next month results in a conviction, how much prison time could Derek Chauvin be facing?
It's pretty high, Ashley. For the Minnesota statute for second-degree murder, he can serve up to 40 years. Now, we have to keep in mind all judges have a range in terms of sentencing guidelines, and typically they're going to look at past criminal history, past misconduct, cases of excessive use of force. People are guessing that if convicted, he'll receive about 15 to 20 years in prison. So again, many people feel like that's not enough because you can't get George Floyd back, but that is the way our system is set up. So we'll just have to see if the hands of justice deal out a fair result.
She said it right there. That is the way our system is set up. And ultimately, I think that it is great to hear someone, and thank you. Shout out to all of you over there at Black News Channel for keeping, these cases up there so that we can understand the facts as they come out. But the thing is here is that it's so true when we talk about the way our system is set up. A lot of bureaucracy there that doesn't really allow most often normal community members to understand a lot of the process. So I appreciate them for breaking it down the way that they did so that we can understand what was really behind this decision. And one of the greatest things that she actually said there that boosts me is that the protests were working. So when we talk about people taking their power, utilizing their voices, coming together with those who are of like mind, that's what the protests did. The protests were there so that people could come out of their homes and say, you know what, this isn't right. And this is not the country that I want to live in terms of all of these systemic oppression, systemic racism, the fact that we see so much police brutality. So honestly, another case for us to follow up on, man, once they are able to select a jury, once it starts to move. I know that all of America and globally will have their eyes on this.
Yeah, there's so many cases, like locally, nationally, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor. You know what I'm saying? I mean, there's quite a few that are out there. Oh man, these shows these days have been real heavy, but I got something light and right, and we're gonna change the energy when we get back. We got a short clip here from Jazzy Red. You might have saw her. She was on a segment with Besa on the Rewind with Besa from Tacoma, living down in LA. Just a super creative individual, and she did a video on like what's the history of Black history. Taking a break right now. You're watching the Morning Update Show.
I did it for the city, I did it for the love, I did it for the people, I did it for us. Back on this rap ish, I ain't even broke a sweat, homie, this practice. Pondering my next move, staring at my track list, hope I ain't miss my window. Praying like a Baptist, Seattle's own, tired of this Game of Thrones. They made a list of the best rappers and guess who wasn't on? While the disrespect continues, I'm steady packing these venues.
Converge Media produces culturally relevant content for Black and urban audiences.
Our coverage is raw, transparent, and objective, praised by community leaders, government officials, and residents. Support Converge Media today via Venmo, Cash App, or PayPal at Converge Media.
Man, we need music in here. We gotta have to hook. I mean, we got these speakers in here, because you know what I like to hear, right? Like, I walk it out. I walk it out. We gotta get all. It's been funky, man. You know what I'm saying? The last week, like, this news show is just, damn.
I know.
You know what I'm saying? I'm like, man, I shake it off, man.
Yeah, exactly. I agree.
It's bad. So we got something right here. My mom always says we can't leave people in an affected state. And I think we definitely have the last few episodes.
It's no fault of our own.
This week and last week, we left people with a real heavy state, man. And we even tend to forget that it's Black History Month.
Right.
I mean,
true.
Whoa, man! I can't wait to get back to like the stuff that we actually want to be making.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Those were some good old days on this show. And I really aspire to hopefully get back to that, where this show was just really about the uplifting and things like that. So hopefully we're heading back there. But for now, this is great right here. We got a video that Jazzy Red put together. Like I said, Jazzy, originally from Tacoma, living large down there in LA, such a creative individual. Jazzy Red is also a YouTuber, big YouTuber and everything else, and was on the Rewind with Besa probably maybe about 2 months ago. This isn't the full video here. I'll see him pull it out and put it in the comments. I think Besa is probably watching. So if you can, Besa, when we put this, you can put the link to the full video that's here. But a short clip on like the history of Black history.
Let's take a look at the history of Black history. When we talk about the importance of Black history, we have to take into account why and also how. How did Black history come to be? How did it become an important factor to our culture? For today's lesson, we're going to take a look at the ways Black history was introduced to America and highlight some of the important figures who helped play an impactful role in doing so, starting with Carter G. Woodson. Carter G. Woodson once said that those who have no record of what their forebears have accomplished lose the inspiration which comes from the teachings of biography and history. Woodson, aka the father of Black history, was a writer and historian who dedicated his life's work to African American history. Woodson graduated from the University of Chicago and was the second African American to obtain a PhD from Harvard University after W.E.B. Du Bois. In 1915, Woodson co-founded the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. This organization was all about the studying of Black history academically and celebrating the accomplishments of African Americans. Fast forward to 1926, Woodson created Negro History Week. This was a designated week to learn about Black history. Negro History Week fell in the same week as Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln's birthday. A broad collection of schools and communities in the U.S. celebrated Negro History Week for the first time, and for the next 50 years, Negro History Week served as the blueprint to popularize the study of African American history. But let's not jump too far without acknowledging a few things that happened in between. In 1933, Woodson published The Miseducation of the Negro. Known as one of his best works, The Miseducation of the Negro takes a look at Woodson's argument centered around the way African Americans have been culturally indoctrinated rather than taught in the American school system. And he wasn't wrong. I mean, by the mid-1960s, the most popular textbook in 8th grade U.S. history classes only mentioned 2 Black people in the entire century since the Civil War. Think about that. That's 40 years after Negro History Week became a thing. But don't get it twisted. The 1960s were the years of the Black Revolution and set the foundation for what we know today as the Black Power and the Civil Rights Movement. We refused to be ignored. And to prove that we were heard loud and clear, in 1976, President Ford officially recognized the month of February as Black History Month. So if you didn't know before, now you know the history of Black History Month. So February 2020 marked the 44th Black History Month this country has celebrated. And you would think 44 years is enough time for America to realize the significant role Black lives have played in American history.
All right, big shout out to Ushkashi on the wire.
Oh, I love it. No, that's good stuff. Shout out to you, Jazzy Red. That's amazing.
Yeah, good, man. Good stuff there. You know what I'm saying? I mean, this is it's good to see our people shining and in the creative space and creating great content and everything else, huh?
Absolutely. What a way to give us a good boost at the end there. Oh, you know how much I appreciate the boost.
man,
so much.
We need it. That's for sure. Any last words for you before we get out of here?
Oh man, it's Wednesday already. I mean, I'm just saying we're almost there to Friday, man. You know, make it a great Wednesday, folks. Try to keep your chins up through all of this news we keep giving you. I'm glad that we were able to end you off with a nice boost.
All right. Tonight, 6:15 p.m., the coronavirus update show. We got the big dog himself, Dr. Duchin from Seattle King County Public Health. He's the doctor that's running all this COVID stuff over there at the county. So we're going to check in with Dr. Duchin tonight at 6:15. You don't want to miss that. And yeah, I would continue to remind our viewers to go forward in your purpose, go forward in your humanity. And until tomorrow at 11 a.m., peace.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun.